This is the voice of the soul who was once Dr. Joseph Goebbels, speaking to you again on this hot midsummer night from deep behind enemy lines in Jutropolis, belly of the beast, occupied Murica. I'm going to tell you a little time travel story. In my last ayahuasca journey, I learned, among other things, that it is possible to break the matrix, that the universe is made up, conscious co-creation is made up of emotion. The stuff that builds the universe, the soup, the food or fuel source that makes up the universe is made from emotion. And then your thoughts simply build on top of that. So if you're coming from a negative emotion, if you're coming from lies, if you're coming from trauma, that's what's going to create in the universe. And it breaks down to very simple things. This is what became apparent to me in this most recent ayahuasca venture, even more so than the last one. But I had learned, let's just say I learned that it was possible to do a very small shifting, a sort of Mandela effect, using EFT, using and meditation and prayer and opening and allowing. So I decided to expand on that, and I decided to try a little experiment. I was going to try to go back in time and fix something. Just a tiny bit. So I called up the shaman's helper and asked if he had a ceremony coming up, and sure enough, there was one the following weekend. The minute I made that phone call, things started to come together. I reconnected with the woman who is the mother of the boy who is now, the boy who was Helga, who is now a 6-year-old boy. This boy remembers the right. Here is this little boy who remembers being in Germany, remembers this little 3-year-old boy asking his mother, where is Uncle Hitler? Okay, so this boy, who after a number of conversations with his mother, I had deduced is Helga Goebbels, my daughter. And Helga was psychic. That's something that came out in the dream. And through this little boy, Benjamin, I felt that I could connect through him back to Helga and get a message through. And why Helga? Because of my connection with her, my bond with her. She was my daughter, and I grieve for her. And I grieve for all of my children. And it's because of that bond that I hope to get just a little message through. And that message was, when that pilot comes, Hannah Reich, when that pilot came down to the wolf's lair to rescue the children, Magda Goebbels insisted that the children stay in the wolf's lair. She wouldn't let the children go. Everybody begged her, please let the children escape. Hannah begged her. I begged her. But you know, Magda had everybody pussy whipped. I talked about this in the message about Magda. And my regret, my grief is that I wasn't man enough to stand up to her and say no. The kids are getting on the plane. So my fear of what Magda would think was greater than my love for my children. And I've had to live with that guilt for 80 years. And it molded who I was reincarnated into, I never was able to grieve. I never got over that guilt, and I allowed myself to be shoved into this shitty incarnation, a poor Jew in America with low self-esteem, self-loathing, really, never feeling comfortable in my own skin, and never understanding why, no matter what I did, life just kept sucking balls. It goes back to that moment. Besides the fact that Yahweh had punished me, as well as punishing all of us who worked hard in the right to save humanity. So we were we were punished. And people misunderstand the karma. They think that they get a bad karma from having done bad things to other people, and then they get bad karma. It doesn't work that way at all. Good people get punished, bad people get away with it. Us in Germany, we tried to break humanity free of the matrix, and for this, the God of the Jews, who is ruling the world, punished us and gave us shitty karma with bad circumstances. All of my friends in our soul journey that are connected to the Reich are having some kind of struggle in their life. Nobody's having it easy. So anyway, the guilt that I felt allowed me to just take on this contractual agreement. So if I could just go back and tell Helga, the one that I could reach through, had the best possibility of reaching through, if I could just say, Helga, get on that plane. Tell your sisters, tell your brother, don't listen to your mom, get on the plane. We already know that Helga didn't finish drinking the poison. She survived the poisoning only to be raped and attacked and killed by the Red Army. And this was after seeing her mummy and daddy dead. And then reincarnating into this little boy, remembering all of this trauma. So I think there's a tiny crack in the door that I figured I could slip a message through. So anyway, I was able to reconnect with the mother. The boy is still having nightmares. He's not doing well. And I really hope that I can help find resolution for him. I also reconnected with Heydrich. I told her, the woman who was Heydrich, and told her what my plans were, and she gave me an inventory of all of the issues with Himmler and how Heydrich was allowed to die, and perhaps if Heydrich knew that Himmler and his buddies were dabbling in the occult, but he did not really see it as anything dangerous. And had he known, he may have been vocal in maybe putting a stop to it. So those were the sort of issues that she and I discussed. And I even reconnected with Magda, who in her current form never talks to me. And I out of nowhere, her kid brother reached out to me to let me know that she wasn't doing well. And I just had a brief exchange just to ask how she was doing. And she said, pray for me. So this all led up to my going to the ayahuasca journey. So I get to this ayahuasca journey. I bring my little altar. I had a holy icon of the mother and child. the Virgin Mother with the little Jesus. And I had a Jesus icon with the sword, an icon that I made with Jesus holding the sword, and behind his head is the Schwarze Sonne, the black sun. And I had a picture of the boy Benjamin with his mother, and below that a picture of myself as Goebbels with Helga. And I made this little altar with my candle, my holy bread, and my incense and my frankincense, and my little jar of holy water that I have on my altar at home when I pray. I brought all of this stuff. I've learned a few things after doing some ayahuasca ceremonies and also in participating in prayer and meditation on a daily practice. So I decided I was going to come into this ceremony with noble silence and serenity and open up my heart and mind to the universe and receive whatever needed to be received. Of course, it didn't go that way. I'll tell you what happened. Whatever this brew that the shaman had prepared was some pretty strong stuff. And right away, upon taking this, I didn't have pretty visions. I didn't have hallucinations. I went straight into, I don't like this. This sucks. I'm afraid. And that's what came out. That was the first thing to come out, was fear. And I became aware of this fear. And I became aware of the fact that I inject fear and trauma into all of my thoughts. Therefore, all of my conscious co-creation is going to end up in failure because I vector in fear. And I could see fear, it's sort of pointy. And creation is round. It's a circle. And I could actually see my mind doing this to myself. And I began to attempt to teach myself to remap my thoughts. So whenever I had the pointy thought, which is fear and trauma, I would try to envision the pointy becoming a round, a circle. Now we're supposed to think of love, 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 love. I don't even know what love is. All I know is betrayal and abandonment. I'm in this constant cycle of betrayal and abandonment my whole life. Don't even know what love is, but I know what a circle looks like. And I know that if I try to quiet my mind and receive and allow, then new possibilities can come in. And I can get out of this cycle of trauma, fear, because I could see this happening. You have fear, which is anticipation of the bad thing, then the bad thing happens, then you have trauma afterwards as you're trying to sort out or resolve the bad thing. And then what happens is your ego defines its sense of self by this fear, event, trauma cycle, and it forms these 4 points of a box. And you end up, or a person ends up in this box, and that box defines their co-creation for the rest of their life. And I was able to actually see that. I could see how my whole life was defined by it and ruled by it. And I could say, wait a minute, I don't like this. Let me try to envision circles instead. It's a start. So that's how that journey started off. Now I had this altar all set up with my candle and all of that stuff. Things started to get very strange in the ceremony. Because remember, I wanted to go back in time and communicate this message to Helga. I wanted my love for my daughter to carry through time and space, to get that one little thought through. some strange things started happening at ceremony. First of all, there's this part of the ceremony where the shaman says, okay, everybody grab a stick, and we throw it into this fire, and he says, burn. This is all in Spanish. But anyway, so we're supposed to burn the stick. I couldn't find a stick. I wanted to let go of something. I wanted to let go of fear. Fear, fear, fear rules my life. Okay, grab a stick, let go of fear, throw it in the fire. Couldn't find a stick. Earlier that day before ceremony, I'm the guy who made the pile of sticks. So I knew where the sticks were. I go over there to where the sticks are. It's just grass. There's no sticks. I could not find a stick to do this ceremony of letting go of fear. So that was the first freaky thing that happened. And then this ceremony where he tells people to get up and burn the stick, I knew that I was going through a really bad trip, and I wanted to like not be too close to the shaman because I didn't want to sort of be in his way. I wanted to sort of hang back and just deal with my shit. And I kept ending up really close to the shaman, and I don't remember how I got there. And sometimes he was on my right, and sometimes he was on my left, and it seemed like he kept moving around in different positions of the circle, where him and his whole little setup and his little altar thing was like at 90-degree angles relative to each other. It kept moving around. It's like, how the fuck did he get over here? How the fuck did he get, and how did I get over here? I couldn't even remember how I got over there. So it was extremely disorienting. And also during the night, I couldn't find my own little altar and my little blanket. So what was starting to happen was I made the request to go back in time and change something. And what was starting to happen was that in this present reality, I was starting to fade out of existence. At one point, my altar wasn't there. My little blanket wasn't there. I looked and looked and looked and couldn't find my little area. Now, later on, someone said that I had wandered off to some other spot away from the circle and was hanging out over there. Maybe so. I don't know. But all I remember is I was looking for my spot, and I saw other people, and I saw her spot and his spot, but my spot wasn't there. I ceased to exist. And another time I saw my altar, and I looked at the photos, and the photo of Benjamin was starting to black out, like it wasn't there. And I became afraid. Now here in this ceremony, I started to see the grid. I looked up in the sky and I could see the grid. This would make sense if you've ever read the Wes Penry papers. He talks about this, that this universe that we live in is inside of a grid. And I could see it. And I also saw our ceremony, which was outdoors with a campfire in the middle. This ceremony appeared to be inside of a dome or a temple. And at one time it looked like an actual church with holy icons and stuff. And at some point it looked like an orchestra, where I was the conductor, and over there was the violins and the cellos and the woodwind section. And here I was the conductor, and I was going to conduct a reality. And then I could see myself being in the big room. Let me tell you what happens in the big room. The big room is like the war room when the generals get together and they look at the big map and they move all the little soldiers around. I was in like the big room. And I had the keys to the kingdom in my hand. I was, metaphorically speaking, handed a crayon and told, you want to change the timeline? You want to create new reality? Here you go, Brian. Here's a crayon. Make reality. And I became afraid. I became afraid because if I took that crayon and started to draw the new reality, that I would cease to exist. My mission for coming here in this incarnation on this earth would have been accomplished, and I would cease to exist. I would no longer be. And I was afraid. Now, what I didn't know or didn't think of at the time was that I would still exist. I would just be something completely different. I would be a god, or I would just be another person in another universe or something. I would exist. But everything that I know that I am in this life would be gone. And I was terrified of that. And so the keys to the kingdom that I was handed, that I had in my hand, I had the Holy Grail in my hand. And it was taken away because I wasn't ready yet. And I was put back in my little area with my altar, with my photographs that were all exactly as they were before. And fucking nothing changed. Nothing changed. Because I was too afraid to let go of what I know. And what am I in this life? I'm the kvetch. I'm just a fucking Jewish kvetch. The kvetch is about how my life sucks and is nostalgic for Germany. And that's all I know. And I was afraid to let go of that, of this shitty existence that I could have, but I became afraid. And I never realized that. And that is why in this life, in this incarnation, I can't seem to ever get out of my funk, because I'm afraid to. I'm afraid to let go of my fear, which it's just completely bizarre. It's a trap. But I saw it. I saw it very clearly for the first time. Why I'm in this trap and why I've never been able to get out of it. Now, there's the story of Percival in the King Arthur and the Holy Grail, in which he went through this similar thing. If you go look at the movie Excalibur, it was released in the early 1980s. It was a wonderful movie. And there's a scene where Percival has the Grail. He's about to grab the Grail, but he becomes afraid and he runs away. You'll have to get the movie to see it, because it's not on YouTube. That particular scene never shows up. I mean, there is the scene where later on in the movie where he actually does receive the Grail. The significance of that for me is that in this time, this journey, I had the Grail in my grasp, and I was afraid, and I ran away, and I failed my mission. But just like Percival, I believe I will be able to come back a second time and I will get the Grail. But in order to get the Grail, I have to be ready to let go of my ego, let go of everything that I have come to learn as my definition of myself. I've got to let all of it go. Get rid of it. No more. And be open and ready to receive a completely new identity, someone who is a total stranger to what I am now. And that's what I want. I want to be someone else. And I have to be ready to take that jump. So my mission failed, and I came out of that mission just feeling, oh shit, I failed. I failed. Here I not only could have saved my daughter, but I could have changed the timeline. What if I actually succeeded and the children survived? Okay, so Hitler goes and shoots himself anyway, or maybe escaped and went to Argentina, we don't know. Whatever. What would Magda have done? I know that I wouldn't have shot myself. And with Hitler gone, I was now the Reichsfuhrer, and then it would have been me to have to negotiate with the Soviets and the Americans. And I would have handled things very, very differently. As per my last message that I just transmitted. So even if Germany lost, the outcome might have been better. But you know what? We'll never know, because I didn't accomplish my mission, or at least I didn't this time. But what I did accomplish is I got to see the set of even though I had the crayon in my hand, or the grail, or the keys in my hand, and they were withdrawn because I wasn't ready, I got the instructions on what I need to do to be ready. And I spent the rest of the morning, or the rest of the night as it went into morning, grieving, and just grieving and moaning. And then later that day, it was a Friday night, and then into Saturday, I went to a Greek Orthodox monastery to stop in there for prayers. It was Saturday is Vespers and Compline, so I did that, and I was just so grateful to be alive and grateful to just be able to pray. And I've never felt that way. I've never been grateful to be alive, and this was the first time I actually felt that way. And grateful to just be there and be allowed to pray. And I started crying in church, and I'm trying to keep quiet and not bother people. And I'm just, I mean, I don't even know anybody there. I'm just like this guy that walks into monastery. I knew one or two of the monks. That was about it. But I was just so grateful to just be there and pray. And then when I came home, that's when the magic really happened. I could say the magic, or the conclusion of this message, what I came away with. Now, at the ceremony, there's all kinds of people there, and they're going through their respective journeys and their life drama, and they're seeing all kinds of things totally different. Some of them are seeing little blue aliens and hallucinating and seeing fairies, and it's all wonderful. I find it kind of amazing when I talk to these other people going through their journeys, how very different they are, and how amazing and wonderful their journeys are. It just shows you how many permutations of parallel universes exist. So anyway, there's this one girl there who's a lovely young black woman, and she sings and she plays this little hand drum, and it's such a different human experience from what I'm used to. And then when I'm going through my junk, and she starts singing in ceremony, and I'm hearing this out of this completely other universe, uh, it was just, it was very refreshing and very encouraging for me. And I may do another message uh, about that experience, my interaction and my relationship with the black race. So in any case, uh, I I'm home Saturday evening, still processing the whole ceremony that I had went through the night before, and I, in my imagination, listening to the sound of her singing, and I attached onto that the words that I had been thinking, the words which would be to a song with her singing in the style that she sings. The words I wrote down, which I will provide a link. Helga get on the plane. Don't listen to your mother. Tell your mother, tell your sisters, tell your brother, get on that plane. Fly away, get on that plane. And I began singing this, and I couldn't even get through it without just bursting out into crying. Crying more than I've ever cried in my entire life. I was howling, and this is like 4 in the morning from my apartment. I don't know if I disturbed neighbors or not. But I was just crying, 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 more than I've ever cried in my whole life. I've never grieved so much in my whole life. And I just tried to sing these words as they came out of me. And I just cried and cried and cried and cried. It was the first time that I've ever been able to grieve for the loss of my children. I had been carrying this with me for 80 years. I have been carrying this with me literally through time and space, through incarnations, from that one into this. And I've never been able to grieve. And I finally was able to grieve. Grieving is the process of letting go of trauma. Trauma is trying to fix something that you can't fix. And grieving is that process of accepting it. It happened. I can't fix it. So now, every day when I do my prayers, I meditate, I try to observe my mind and be aware of the little pointies and the little circles and how my mind works. And I try to be conscious of my day, to observe, am I treating myself good or am I sabotaging myself? Am I living a life of mindfulness, as we say in Buddhism? Am I the way when I eat, when I rest, when I work, am I being mindful? And just observe and be quiet in my mind and allow and receive. And stop trying to fix. Because all my life, it's what I do is I fix things. I can't fix this. I can't fix the world. I can't go in there and turn knobs and make these fucking crazy liberals stop doing shit. I have to allow God. I have to be quiet and listen and receive and allow and observe my thoughts. And this is how creation happens. This is how universes change. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to time travel in the way that I had constructed or had intended to do. I don't know if that's going to work. I wish I could hop in a time travel machine and go back in time and have a talk with the boss and some of the other leaders, like I talked about in my last message, and let them know what's going on. It sounds great in the science fiction story, but I'm telling you what that means. It means breaking the universe, and it means opening up doors to possibility that you cannot imagine. And it's very, very hard to let go of everything that you know. But that is the way to do it. So what can we do? We can do little steps. We can change the universe. I don't know quite how it would work. I'm going to continue to work on this and find out. It might mean little by little Mandela effect type of tweaking and changing. change this little thing in our past, change that little thing. Or maybe we cannot change the past, but we can repair what's in front of us to make things eventually set the course of the timeline back onto the correct path where it should be. Because again, time isn't even linear. We're just these meat suits that keep recycling in these incarnation after incarnation until we can figure out how to get out of this trap. So do we completely exit this universe and never come back, or do we gradually shift this universe into the back into the correct universe? Again, I don't know the answer to that. But I'm on the beginning of the journey of finding out. And I know that I'm going to be back in that room again, and I'm going to have those keys in my hand. I will find the Grail. So normally I would play some music, but I'm going to skip that part, and instead, because I don't have a recording of the music of the song that I wrote, that'll happen when it happens. I don't know what's going to happen with the girl who was singing at ceremony. I asked if she wanted to record it, but I don't know if that's going to happen anyway, so I will skip the music at the end, and I will just instead provide a link to the lyrics.